Technological changes and that alchemy of imagination, ambition, and regulation have always driven the media and entertainment sector. It was left reeling like the rest of the economy in 2020 when COVID-19 upended the world. But since last March, TV show storylines have progressed, cricket is being played, digital streaming services are scoring new audiences, and movies have had to make peace with the small screen. On the Media Dialogues today, let's find out what 2021 has in store. For that, we've got to welcome Uday Shankar, president of industry body FICCI, and till just a few days ago, the man in charge of Star TV and the Walt Disney Company in Asia. Uday, thank you for joining us. It's good to see you.
Always good to be with you, Anuradha. Happy New Year.
So, Uday, 2021, it's got to be better than what 2020 was, isn't it? Given just how shocking the disruption was and how never before an experience it was for everybody.
I hope and pray so. You know, the whole world is hoping and praying that 2021 would be way, way better than 2020, which was one of the most cataclysmic, catastrophic years in our memory. So hopefully, there is a vaccine that's rolling out in this country, and there are vaccines rolling out in the other parts of the world. And hopefully we'll all be very safe and happy very soon.
Give me a sense of what the last year exposed of the media and entertainment industry, given that, you know, at the end of April, you were here on this show talking about how frustrating it was that you had a captive audience in front of a screen, but you didn't have content to put out. What weakness was exposed where the sector was concerned?
First of all, we in the business of media and entertainment, we in the business of storytelling, we love nothing more than surprises when it comes to our delivering the surprises. But one thing that happened last year was that we were at the receiving end of a rude surprise, and we were totally not prepared for it. It was a situation where people were, you know, there were a large number of people glued to all kinds of media screens, and there wasn't enough to feed them. And we, more than the fact that we didn't have enough to feed them, I think we were not prepared how to feed them in the new world order, where new shoots were not happening and people were prepared to consume. There was a lot of stuff that could have been done, but as an industry, we were not prepared for that. And of course, there was a massive disruption in the business model. Advertising became a fraction of what it was. Distribution became a bit of a challenge. So there was all of that issues. In other parts of media, if you go to newspapers, the printing, delivery, news gathering, and of course, monetization, they were all affected. The good news was, of course, that, and you were talking about my expressing the frustration, that was, initially we were all very frustrated. But as you know, that in the middle of the lockdown, Walt Disney Company India and Star, they launched Disney Plus Hotstar in India.
Yeah, you went ahead with that launch, yeah.
Went ahead with that launch. And that is what I think is the moral of the story as far as I'm concerned, that you can see a crisis and allow the crisis to, cripple you and put you in completely a frozen state, or you can seize the initiative and turn the crisis into an opportunity. And I think Disney Plus Hotstar did exactly that. We launched on April 3, which was in the early phases of the lockdown when sales was disoriented. We had no way of doing a traditional launch with traditional marketing, traditional content, new content offerings, etc., etc. But we made the best of what we had, and as a result of that, in less than 9 months, as you know, Disney Plus got 25 million, more than 25 million subscribers in India, which is one of the fastest ramp-ups of any streaming services anywhere in the world. So that's the moral of the story, that a crisis can surprise you, can deliver a nasty blow, but if you have an idea and if you're entrepreneurial and if you have, if you're comfortable with technology, you can use that as an opportunity to not only recover the lost ground, but create yourself a massive competitive advantage and offer a totally fresh contemporary proposition to the consumers, which is more in sync with what their needs are.
I was reading something you've written, Uday, where you were quite scathing about the news business, especially newspapers, where you sort of said that they're in the business of advertising, not journalism. And you, in general, for the M&E industry, you've sort of suggested that there was complacency which was exposed in 2020 because of COVID, wasn't it?
I'm going to get into trouble for saying that, and thanks to friends like you will keep everyone reminding of what I once wrote. But I believe in what I wrote. First and foremost, let's not blame everything on COVID. Media and entertainment had a crisis. The fact that the news industry is in the middle of a crisis of credibility, crisis of business model, and a larger crisis of social contract that news enjoys with the society. Cannot be taken away. And COVID merely exposed that very badly. I have said that newspapers, but not just newspapers, even news channels, they're in the business of selling advertising and not selling content and news. I think it may not be pleasant to say this, but it is a fact. The focus seems to have shifted. We are only focusing on things like ratings, things like circulation, things like distribution. They're all very important. After all, we are in the business of mass media, so the masses cannot be taken out of our business. However, and you do want to reach out to a larger number of people and make sure that they consume you. However, you want to also make sure that your brand, your credibility, your integrity, and the value of the proposition, the content that you offer, is the primary reason why people buy you, and not just because you're selling most aggressively. And I think there is a problem that we all need to look at that.
So the crisis of credibility where it comes to the news business, crisis of complacency, and I'll go into that a little later, but also the crisis of complacency where it comes to the overall entertainment business, including, of course, cinema and movie making, you think?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the crisis of credibility and crisis of complacency, also the crisis of inadequate innovation, both creative innovation and technological innovation across the board, is really, really at the heart of it.
You talked about Disney Plus Hotstar. Would you say that the clear winner or the big success and the good story that emerged for the sector in 2020 was OTT and streaming services across board?
I think so. Because, look, they were, and that's why globally the streaming services grew rapidly. And you have to look at the reasons behind it. They see themselves as challengers. So whether it is Disney Plus Star in India or other services anywhere in the world, big or small, they see themselves as challengers, and their primary focus is to sort of disrupt the established order. So they were not stumped by it, or if they were stumped by it, they recovered and they immediately saw an opportunity in it, as opposed to the traditional media, which was frozen for a very long time.
Do you see this party continue in 2021? How worried are you about the fact that that streaming services, digital content services, websites, platforms, including news, have now shifted to the I&B ministry, and there's the specter of a content code that is looming over everybody? Where are you on that? How worried are you about what role regulation will play in where the OTT party is concerned?
Look, my views are unfortunately I can't endorse either side fully, and that makes me unpopular with both sides. Generally, I'm not in favor of regulation, simply because regulation does not solve a problem. Just putting somebody on top does not give you the confidence that person is going to act in the best interest of society and every other stakeholder. That's not been our experience so far. So I'm generally critical of regulation and regulators, and I'm very critical of regulators in this country. When it comes to media, regulation has only destroyed value for the consumers, for society, and for the business. You see what has happened in television with so much regulation, distribution sector regulation and all of that. Today, Indian television industry while it is one of the most competitive industry, it's also in terms of business, one of the most rickety and unsustainable industries in the world. And regulation has played a massive role in that. If we all talk about the fact that everybody is chasing ratings, and so do the regulators, but everybody is chasing ratings only because distribution and direct to consumer income has been completely suffocated because of unthoughtful regulation. So everybody has just one source of revenue most people have just one source of revenue to chase, that's advertising revenue, and that really creates sometimes very unhealthy competition. But that said, you cannot also say that I should have the freedom to show anything on my screens that I want to in the name of creative freedom. Creative responsibility is a must with creative freedom. And I think while regulators have not been very thoughtful generally, and especially in the newer media, especially like some of the stuff that we are seeing in OTTs, in Indian as well as global. I'm not the one who says only the global ones are bad and Indian ones are doing all kinds of things. You cannot be seeking the permission or license to push semi-porn or smut and all kinds of sleazy content and all kinds of regressive retrograde beliefs and ideas in the name of creative permissiveness. So
you're saying the OTT services have brought this upon themselves?
I don't know whether I can say that they have brought it upon themselves, because if not this, then something else would have been used to regulate, because in general, there is a desire in this country to regulate than to not regulate. And that's, when it comes to media. But the OTT services haven't helped their cause by being pretty fast and loose.
Uday, let me just interrupt you with something you've said. Your quote is, my bigger concern is that digital media might also struggle under the weight of too much thoughtless regulation. This is your chance to tell us what this thoughtless regulation may be, because people watching who are in that position to, make those decisions will probably be able to use this as input, isn't it?
That's the point I'm making, that, just giving it to a bunch, just unleashing a bunch of government officials or retired officials is not going to bring in more creativity and is not going to provide better direction. All it does is that it tends to, regulation and regulators tend to throw the baby with the bathwater, in my experience. And my big fear is that at a time when this industry can really create social and economic value for this country. And today we are in that amazing position where for the first time, probably sitting in India, we can create global media businesses and, help brand India and help the business case and economic value creation in this country. Regulation will come in the way of all of that. It would come in the way of innovation, investment, and greater ambition. On the other hand, if those who are running these businesses and those who are aspiring to build these businesses, if they are not mindful of the larger social responsibility, and just because there is no, for lack of a better word, censorship, let's make merry kind of attitude comes in, then there will be censorship, and it will be worse than anything that we have seen before. So it requires that awareness that we need to be careful, we need to be mindful. I believe that media is an important business, Anuradha, primarily because what you do impacts the thinking and ways of behavior of people. And that's why we should use that very, very responsibly. We should always, I believe we should always push the envelope. We should always challenge the established norms and beliefs, but we should always stand for creating better values in society. And I don't use the term better values in a regressive, sort of
I hear you on that, but I also think that the focus so far where content, sort of breaking or sort of offending sensibilities or the values, better values, is in the, sex and violence territory. But otherwise, actually, all streaming services, including the one that you launched in this country, have been very cautious when it comes to really pushing the envelope in terms of content, isn't it? And by that, I mean the subject matter and, whether it is political, whether it is, just new ways of thinking. You all have all been very cautious given the large corporations that you all represent, isn't it?
You represent a large corporation too, so I don't think it's only on me. But nevertheless, I think it's early days. The easiest thing is to bring in more sex and violence, and I think that's coming. But there is an attempt to break out, and people will and are exploring newer ideas. I do know that before I checked out at Hotstar, a series of really interesting, very fresh, very different concepts had been commissioned by me and my team. So I think it's early days. We need to give the space and the time, and we need to have the patience for all these services to learn and make some mistakes. Some shows will only have sex and violence, as you call it, but some shows will go and create different kind of explore different paradigms and push other boundaries, including political. But don't forget that doing a political show in this country is really, really tough. I come from a news background. One of the things that I always wanted to do is to do shows that captured the political tone and mood and the spectrum of this country. But even mentioning the name of a political leader is a recipe for getting your house set on fire, literally. So it's not easy to do that. And I also, while I'm critical of my own industry, we should also not forget that a society needs to be tolerant in order to get high quality content and different kinds of creative freedom. Because disagreement, the problem is everybody in this country increasingly believes that only their point of view has a right to exist. And I'm not saying whether it is for the right or the left,
Sure,
progressive or the reactionary. They all have
it's a zero-sum game.
My way or the highway seems to be the only philosophy. And that's not great for creativity. Right. That's not great for society as a whole.
Uday, let's talk a little bit about ratings. You alluded to it early on in the conversation, the currency to know what people are watching and therefore where advertising money will go. We are speaking at the fag end of the 3-month freeze on news ratings because of the scam that has hit BARC, of which you were one of the stakeholders via IBF, which you represented. We've always had instances of breach on the data collection front. But today what we are seeing with the former CEO Partho Dasgupta of BARC in jail, in police custody, we are talking about a breach in data interpretation, which is at the heart and processes of BARC. How did this happen on the watch of BARC, which has on board as stakeholders IBF, AASFI, and the ISA?
So the short answer is I do not know, because while technically my company and I were stakeholders in BARC, it was through the industry body that we all were members of, the IBF. And I was not directly involved with BARC except right in the beginning, number one. Number two, I also don't want to get into that. I don't know the full story, and there's too much happening over there. So I would rather not get into the details of it. But I have to tell you, it's just a currency for trading. There is nothing more to ratings than that. In the last couple of months, as you said, there's been so much about BARC in this country. In the middle of a massive public health crisis that we are going through, economic challenges that we are facing, if you looked around at the news channels, it just almost seems that the single biggest concern, if somebody from Mars landed here last month or in November, that person might be forgiven to think that the biggest crisis India was facing was something called the BARC, not COVID. How sad is that?
It is sad. It is a sad comment. But having said that, what is being reported is a case of corruption of a currency, which everybody is using to determine who gets what share of the ad pie on which the business model of this industry rests.
That's exactly the problem. That the problem is that in most countries, successful television businesses operate on the strength of their ability to get money from subscribers, which is the affiliate income. And that in this country has been completely destroyed because of regulatory thoughtlessness. There's no other reason for that. And as a result, there is no incentive for people to build deep relationship with their customers, with their consumers, The only interest is to just draw the attention of a larger number of people to watch their channels, what we call the reach. And as a result of that, there is a perverse incentives for news channels to to get more and more salacious, and for channels, not just news channels, for every channel to do all kinds of things. Today, technology is in a position to measure the entire universe, not just a sample of.
Exactly. If you were just to allow for viewership data to go back.
Exactly. But there are vested interests, obviously, that do not want to do that. You should find out why. And the second thing is that no matter whatever is the manipulation and crisis in BARC, that is really not the biggest crisis facing.
It is not the biggest crisis, but in this universe, it is a story of corruption. I want to just, one last question on this topic, and that is, what is the way out where this industry is concerned?
First of all, every channel operator and creative head and business head needs to back off and start looking at other currencies, not just ratings, but other currencies like brand, credibility, etc. Because this is just one of the currencies, but there is no reason to believe that people only pay for the reach. People pay for credibility, and people pay for other values that they see in their channels. Number one. Number two, as far as fixing the rating system itself is concerned, the need is to move away from sample-based rating to a complete universe-based rating. That's the only way. If the sample size is 300, 400, 800 million, it's difficult to manipulate that, or for it to go wrong. But if it is just a few thousand, it's always open to that kind of distortion.
And you see this as something that the industry will overcome, and we don't need to lose sweat over it.
I hope so. As you know, I'm no longer part of the industry, but I really hope so.
Actually, you hope so, and you're no longer part of the industry. Do I hear you sound relieved that you're no longer part of the industry? Because I think a question that everybody is asking you is, what next to that?
No, I'm not relieved. It's an industry. I am whoever I am, and I'm sitting giving this interview, and you're interested in me today because of what this industry has done for me. So I'm deeply grateful to this industry. I also think that there are businesses, and then there is the business of media, which I think has always been a superior calling as far as I'm concerned, because of what it can, the good that it can do for society and people of this country. So I'm eminently grateful. So I'm not relieved at all. But it's been a long time. I have, 3 decades of my life I spent in this. One of the things, as a journalist and as a person, I always imbibed is to do something, to explore something new, to explore and walk a fresh journey. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm not relieved, but I'm excited about what I may be able to do in the future.
And you're not telling us what that is right now?
That has to be the subject matter of our next interview.
Okay, so then let's talk about what you're doing right now, which is you've been burning the midnight oil for FICCI, especially busiest time of the year as you count down to the union budget. What is it that you think industry is expecting? What is it that government needs to do, given that this is a crisis year and everybody is now looking for one big push in addition to all the various measures that have been taken since COVID hit us?
So, it's a challenging year for everybody, for the government and for the people. But as you know, this is also a year where priorities are almost, have determined themselves, and everybody is aligned generally to restore the growth track of the economy. Is something that everybody, has agreed upon. And the finance minister herself has said that she's going to take some really bold measures in the budget. So I think everybody is hoping that we will be able to do that. We should also be mindful that the government has challenges, but within those challenges, it has done fairly bold, unconventional, and dramatic. It has taken dramatic measures in the last few months to revive the growth of the economy. And I think budget is going to be an important tool, but I am one of those who believe that budget, while being a significant instrument, is not the only instrument for the revival of growth. So I'm hopeful and optimistic that we will see a very good budget. but it's a continuous process. And I think we will continue to see good stuff even after the budget.
All right, Uday, we wish you a lot of good luck. Thank you very much for starting off this year on this channel, on this show, with this conversation and all those insights. We wish you a lot of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuradha. Thank you.
And thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18.